Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Abraham Cox. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer for United Community. And today we're going to be discussing the topic of business email compromise. It's one of the most prevalent and financially damaging cyber crimes that's out there today. I'm pleased to be joined by a panel of experts who over the next 30 minutes we're going to discuss trends. We're going to discuss potential mitigants to this issue and also just ways to generally be more protected personally and within your business. We wanted to have this webinar because we wanted to offer a forum for our bankers to be able to invite customers, partners to a forum to provide additional awareness, also information, and really just education around this really important topic. Time permitting, we are going to try to take some questions. If you have a question that comes up through our discussion, please use the Q&A feature in WebEx, and we will try to get to those at the end of the call. So let me quickly introduce our panel of experts. I'm really excited to have them. First, Agent David Whitlock with the FBI is with us today. Jay Raje, who is the Chief Security Officer for United Community, is with us. He's been with the bank since 2020. Prior to that, he was with the DEA, was a special agent, and retired after many years of distinguished service. Excited also to have Emily Dixon with us. Emily is a Regional Treasury Services Officer based in Savannah, Georgia, working with customers and our bankers across the Southeast. And she also holds a certification as a Treasury professional. And then last but not least, Allison Townsend is here. She leads Treasury Management for the bank, and she leads a team of 40 professionals that are working with customers and our bankers trying to deliver Treasury payment solutions and advice to help our customers' lives easier and help them be protected. So each one of these individuals has over 20 years of experience in their area of expertise. Thank you all for being here. We really appreciate it very much. So we've only got 30 minutes, so we're going to jump right into it. So we're going to try to move pretty quickly and efficiently. And so Jay, I'd love to pose a question to you. Obviously, business email compromise, it's really prevalent. It's on the rise, unfortunately. So could you just provide some context and talk about why it's really important that we focus on this important topic?
Yeah, absolutely. So first, to just get a definition around BEC for people that may not be too spun up on it, it's essentially a cyber attack that targets organizations and they're trying to steal money or critical information. So it's a huge cyber crime, and the FBI in 2023 said that we had lost about $3 billion to business email compromise. And the only thing I think was ahead of that was investment scams. So it was the second most common scam. And the exigency of understanding BEC is that it's often understood when it's too late. And I kind of liken it to knowing that you need an umbrella while it's raining outside and you have nowhere to go for cover. Because the people that are ripe victims, and this is really what's important for people listening to this to understand, the people that are ripe victims for BEC attacks are not stupid people. They are busy people, because these folks are really good at engineering these emails. And every bank sees this, okay? Every bank, every credit union sees victims of BEC where usually collected funds have been sent out. When we say collected funds, we usually talk about ACH or wire transfers. Those are good funds. And those funds will oftentimes be sent to foreign banks or crypto banks. And there's really almost nothing anybody can do once it gets past a very short period of time to try and grab those funds back. And you have to understand what somebody can learn when you think about it by living in your email, right? So we're talking about what accounts you have, what associates you have, what dealings you have. Those are both personal and business, and even your day-to-day patterns. You can probably figure that out. And the really important thing to understand is, as far as this term cyber hygiene that we're going to use a few different times, you can have great cyber hygiene in your organization, but you cannot control what the people you're doing business with are doing on their end. So we are seeing small, busy business entities really struggle with business email compromise, and those a lot of times are title companies, attorneys' offices, contractors, super ripe for BEC, and all kinds of small businesses.
Well, thank you, Jay. So those statistics are pretty compelling. You certainly kind of got my attention. It's kind of scary. Thank you for sharing. So Emily, I'd love to get your thoughts. So you're working with customers and bankers each and every day, who are firsthand have experience with issues, payment scams. Could you share, maybe just to help with context, could you share an example of something you've seen?
Absolutely. And before I dive into an example, I would like to share an insight based on my years of fielding calls from businesses who have been victimized by business email compromise. One of the things that almost always happens in the aftermath of a loss is that the CEO or the stakeholder will come to me privately and say that they just can't believe that he or she fell for that type of scam. And there seems to be a general impression that these are like those lotto scams from back in the day that are just rife with misspellings, and they're glaringly obvious if you're even moderately paying attention. But the reality is that these are far more sophisticated scams. And if you hear from this panel of experts today, you hear the best practices, and you feel like a lot of what we're talking about is just common knowledge, I would encourage you to speak with every person in your financial department just to make sure that they have the same knowledge that you do. Because what's really obvious right now when we're talking about fraud and it's top of mind is another story when you have a million competing priorities on your desk and you're executing tasks under tight deadlines to the best of your ability. That's when you fall victim to the scams. And so if you feel prepared, you're still only as secure as the weakest link in your financial process. So to dive into the example, I'll share one from a couple years ago. This was a large company that was in growth mode through acquisitions, and the CEO emailed the controller and asked him to execute a payment in preparation for an acquisition the following week. And he sort of kind of buttered him up in saying, I really appreciate you. You're going to be a part of this new acquisition. We do need to keep it top secret until all the details are ironed out, but I plan to make the announcement next week, and you're going to be a part of this growth. And so he indicates in the email that he's going to be out of the office on that Friday when the payment would need to take place for a funeral. And he indicated that the accounts payable person should initiate the transaction. He should approve it. And he said, our law firm will call and give you the details of that transaction. It's going to be about X dollars, and it's going to go to XYZ Bank. And so the next morning, Friday morning rolls around, and he stops by the CEO's office, and he says, all right, can I talk to the CEO? Just kind of playing dumb on the whole thing. And the admin said, no, he's at a funeral. He'll be out of pocket with his family all day. So check one. And then the call came in from the law firm confirming the details, everything matched, going to the same bank in the right amount, everything just as expected. And so he took care of the payment, kind of felt good about it. He's probably going to get a promotion in the coming weeks. So Monday morning rolls around, the CFO walks in and says, the balances look off. We talk about what happened at the end of last week. He doesn't want to blow the cover on the acquisition. So he says, let's call the CEO. I was working under his direction. Let's talk about it together. So they called the CEO, who had no idea what either one of them were talking about. And by that point, the funds were gone, and it was a devastating loss to that business.
Wow. Really tough story. Thank you for sharing. Also, some really good advice that you offered kind of at the beginning of your comments. So, Jay, going back to you, so just heard a story involving ACH credits. There's certainly other payment methods that can be compromised, such as wire transfers. Would love if you wouldn't mind sharing how you and the United team are working really hard with our customers to try to support them.
Sure. Yeah, so I can think of an example in January of 24 where a business customer reached out to their banker by email requesting wire transfer. And this was the CFO for the organization. We don't take email requests for wire transfers, too much fraud. So we have a standing rule against that. We do call back to the number on file. We never call back to the number in the email, which is something to remember if you're taking notes. And call back to the number on file, made contact with the customer, confirmed the wire, funds were sent. And Saturday, it was a Saturday, so a lot of times these things are sent at the close of business on Friday. So on Saturday, the actual customer realized the funds were gone, and they discovered the hack. Somebody in their organization had clicked on a phishing email and ingested some malware. So again, giving credit, to United and community banking like this, we started hustling on this on a Saturday. And the relationship manager called myself and called FIU, and we found out that this was incredibly sophisticated in that the fraudster had done what's called a SIM swap. So the fraudster had socially engineered the cell phone company to port the telephone number to a different handset because they knew that this is a common procedure the banks uses, calling to the callback number on file. So luckily, in this case, we were pretty speedy and we were on top of it pretty quickly. We did kind of a multi-pronged attack. So we immediately sent a letter of indemnity to the other bank. We had the accounts locked down very quickly to protect the existing funds. And then we used back channel contacts that we have, at existing banks to just say, hey, this is coming through official channels, but just to give you a heads up. In that case, we were almost able to get a full recovery. On most of them, we are not. On most of them, the money's gone.
Right. Well, it sounds like a good outcome. Obviously, partnership and working closely with multiple areas and different partners is really important. So, Agent Whitlock, usually when we think about business email compromise, we think immediately around loss, financial loss of money. Do you mind speaking to some of the other risks and some of the other concerns that can come out of business email compromise in this topic?
Sure, and you're absolutely right. The majority of the incidents that we see around business email compromise are financial or monetarily motivated. There are folks that are just trying to get that ACH or that wire fraud that's there. But we do have other nefarious actors, bad guys. They're going to use the same tactics, and they're looking for trade secrets, copyright information, or the installation of ransomware. And while that fraudster is inside of that email and making those observations, they're going to see the internal deliberations of the company. They're going to see personal information, family information, and that can cause reputational harm to both the business, to the person themselves. You're also going to be opened up now for potential blackmail or extortion. So there are other significant issues that could come with business email compromise aside just from the financial loss.
Well, those are some eye-opening examples of some of the harm that can come from that. So Jay, pivoting back to you, share some steps that United Community and other financial institutions are taking to help prevent payment frauds.
Sure. Yeah. So what I liken this to is the oxygen mask example that we always get when we get flight instructions on a commercial flight, where you want to put your own oxygen mask on before you help anybody else to get theirs on. So we have to make sure our own house is in order here in the bank. So what we do on the inside is we have fairly stringent and rigorous cyber conditioning. We have an information security group that has installed strong network controls, and we do regular internal and external pen testing, which I really appreciate. We have phishing exercises all the time, and we've gotten better and better at employees spotting them and reporting them. And we also educate our employees. I think yearly I'm getting retrained on awareness of that and getting those reminders. So we also have multiple fraud platforms running on our core, bouncing up against the transactions that are flowing through basically the brain of our bank. The biggest one of which is a product called Verafin. Verafin runs hundreds of analytics that analyze banking habits of customers. Something like, does this customer usually send wires? Why does this check jump from number 2 to number 72? And why did the IP address change for online banking all of a sudden? So, whenever possible, we work to reach out to customers to validate information that may look questionable. We do callbacks on larger wires. We have multi-factor authentication for online banking. And, again, that's a big advantage of community banking, is just knowing your customer. And I think we know ours a little bit better. So,
well, thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
So it sounds like the banking industry is doing a lot to try to help in this particular area. I know it's a high priority for us. So education, awareness, tools, obviously really important. So Allison, I'd love for you to speak to this topic. One, we offer lots of fantastic tools and products for our customers. One of them is PosiPay, which is obviously very effective and with helping in certain risks. Is there a service that helps to mitigate or eliminate business email compromise?
So what I would say is no. It's a really tough question for us in treasury management because of the fact that so much of this is happening before you are originating the payment. And so while we have positive pay for check and ACH fraud, we really don't necessarily have anything to protect you per se from business email compromise. What we do offer is things that help you have strong internal controls around ACH and wire origination to verify information. So let's say you have a recipient that you update. It's going to give you an alert to say, hey, you've updated this recipient. Did you really mean to do this? You've really got to really develop those internal controls prior to sending payments through business online banking. When you upload an ACH batch, you really need to make sure that you are checking those recipient details. You will receive those alerts, and you must use dual control. Using dual control is very critical because if someone's computer has been hacked, you may prevent that transaction from going out if you have another device involved in that transaction. The fraudsters really seem to always be one step ahead of us. And so I think the most important thing I can say is use really good internal controls around making payments to the bank, whether that's via ACH or wire. Make sure that you are reviewing these regularly. We've had instances where customers complain about some of the pop-up alerts that we put in business online banking or some of the details that we're requiring when sending a wire, and those ultimately are there to protect you and really help us mitigate any loss we may have for you or the bank. The other thing that I would just strongly recommend is talking to your insurance provider about a cyber rider. In a lot of cases, these situations come about after the money is lost and you really have no way to recover those funds. And so your backstop is really that cyber insurance policy. I really think that the biggest thing I could say here is that you really can't ignore the fact that fraud is going to happen, regardless if it's never happened to you before. It's just a matter of when. And I think that's the biggest thing for us, is just really making sure to educate our customers and educating our bankers so that they know that these things are happening all over our footprint today.
Well, thank you, Allison. Thanks for sharing those best practices. Certainly, partnering and bringing in your banker and your treasury professional, I think, is obviously a really important step when you think about just reviewing what you have and best practices. So Edge at Whitlock, so we just heard there's no silver bullet with business email compromise. What are some of the other practical things that businesses and individuals can do to help protect themselves?
Sure. I think, some of those practices that we can all do, one would be just to keep our security software updated. Perhaps go a little beyond just a normal pop-up blocker. There are software programs available that specifically target business email compromise, other types of fraud, the use of secondary verification, encryption within emails. Also try to eliminate or at least reduce the use of links or hyperlinks within emails. A lot of the phishing expeditions that come with these fraudsters will originate in an email that looks like every other communication that we get. They're very hard to spot, and that link is actually opening up to the ransomware or the malware, anything else they're using to be able to take over that email. I would also encourage everyone to just slow down. Line by line, if you're sending personal information or you're going to send financial information or a payment, just make sure, open up the header, make sure that that contact information matches what the email should be. Make sure that all the information to both the recipient as well as any other person that's on that email chain is correct before hitting submit.
Great, thank you. So Jay, if someone's sitting here thinking, hey, I think I might have an instance of business email compromise or some other fraud, what's the advice that you would give them as far as what should they do next?
Sure. Yeah. So what you have to remember in any fraud scenario, especially when we're talking about collected funds like wires and ACHs, is that time is of the essence. So you really have to hustle. But that does not mean panic. Panic is only going to make things get delayed. So you have to work hard just to be calm. And you have to remember to pick up the phone. Okay. Think about a time when you've been at home and the power's gone out and how many times you keep trying to flip on the light switch. You're like, hey, the power's out. So you have to remember when you've been subject to a BEC scam that you're infected. So you have to pick up the phone and make calls instead of sending emails. And you should disconnect from your network, especially if you're connected to a network. You're going to think of it as containing the infection, and that is, for lack of a better term, an amputation that needs to happen just to preserve what's still left. And you should call your IT department. And I think that Emily kind of touched on this earlier. This is not the time to succumb to embarrassment. People get embarrassed that they were the subject of a BEC scam, but that is not the time to be prideful about that. You want your IT department to check for forwarding rules because fraudsters compartmentalize things so the actual user of the account doesn't see them. Of course, you want to contact your financial institution. You want to lock down accounts, and you might even need to close and reopen accounts. Secondarily, you're going to want to go back and scan for previous transactions you've done, because who knows how long it's been going on, right? There may be things going back months sometimes. You want to notify affected parties and stakeholders. And I think some people are skittish to do that, but you would want to think, but I want to be notified. And you want to preserve any emails you have as evidence, because sometimes the Bureau or Secret Service or whatever law enforcement entity will have a collective case going, and those emails can be helpful to them. And you also want to consider your card and account controls. I went back and looked the other day just to see the alerts that I could turn on for my online banking, and there was 15 different alerts I could turn on, including external transfer alerts, password change alerts, things like that. And I recommend for everybody to freeze your credit with all 3 credit bureaus. That's a pretty common thing you can look up on the internet how to do. And you can always unfreeze it, but that will, that stops people from looking at your credit report, but it also stops bad guys from taking loans out in your name. And finally, one thing I meant to touch on earlier is that the UCBI Learning Center at our website is really good. They have a ton of really helpful articles that are kind of short and clear and really educate the customer well on understanding these type of cybercrimes.
Wow, yeah, really comprehensive kind of best practices and things to think through. I mean, I was kind of thinking through it. Be quick, but be thoughtful. Ask for help, use all your resources. And I was actually thinking kind of go old school, go analog. You don't immediately think of that.
That's right.
To disconnect and not use the digital tools, but really, really good advice. So kind of last question to you, Agent Whitlock. When you have a situation of BEC, your emails is compromised, it's pretty common to file a police report. Can you talk to the audience a little bit about that process, kind of what may or may not happen, kind of why that may or may not be important?
Sure. The minute that an incident is acknowledged that is going to have a fraud intent, so the money has been sent, immediately contact your bank and law enforcement. Your own financial institution is going to have its own internal mechanisms to be able to contact that other bank or wherever that money may have went, and they may be able to help outside of law enforcement. As far as law enforcement goes, we're going to try very quickly to help be able to retrieve those funds. Unfortunately, we're talking days and hours, not days and weeks, is the time frame that we're working with to be able to help you retrieve any funds if it's possible at all. With the FBI, obviously you can find your local FBI office, be able to call them. There's always agents there to be able to be on call, to be able to help you with these situations. But our primary mechanism is ic3.gov. ic3.gov is an online way for you to be able to provide your information to exactly document that this incident happened. And then that program is going to start that chain of events that needs to happen to be able to stop those fraudulent funds that are being transferred, possibly within the United States, possibly internationally. And then those techniques that we're going to be able to use allows us to start or possibly complete a criminal investigation, because obviously these scammers don't just target one person. Typically the FBI is going to have a litany of cases that are open, whether it be your email, the fraudster's bank account, digital currency. Those are all links that we can make to other cases that may already have things identified that can help us here locally.
Great. So as soon as possible, and also alert all the parties that you do business with, bank, et cetera. Really good information. So we're kind of finishing up the call. We've got about 5 minutes left. As I mentioned, we wanted to take some questions. We do have a couple of questions in the queue, but if you have one, feel free to send it. So Linda, thanks for submitting a question. And maybe this goes to Allison, but if we don't take requests by email, I think I heard you say that, Jay, what are the acceptable methods for customers?
For them to originate ACH and wires, it's recommended that they're doing that online. We've tried to definitely, most banks have tried to definitely eliminate most of the traffic that's coming into the branches to originate wires, because that's a pain to have to do that for the customer when they can do that online. And when they do that, they can then have those internal controls in place to be able to have dual control, receive alerts when information is being changed. So those are the two primary methods of how we're sending payments today.
Great, thank you. The other question I had, which was kind of touched on already by Agent Whitlock, which was around timing. So obviously time's of the essence, you want to do it as soon as possible. What should somebody do if they're not sure? They're not sure fraud or how prevalent it might be, given the importance of time. We'd love for any of you all to speak on that topic.
I'd like to jump in on that, because what you have to understand is when bad guys do digital transfers of money to another bank, not only do they have to get the money out of that bank, but they have to now remove it from the bank that they sent it to, because it can't just stay there, because the FBI will come get it. So it's not as easy as it may seem to do that. It's always worth to try. Even if a week has gone by, your chances are shrinking, but we have seen 5, 6, 7 days on rare occasions where funds can still be retrieved. I don't know if you feel any different about that.
Correct. So, every case is different, but some of these cases do use mules and other mechanisms. A mule being either an unwitting or a third party that is working in conjunction with that fraudster. And anytime those fraudulent funds you've sent are making numerous hops, that gives us the opportunity to take another stab at stopping that process. So again, as soon as you believe a fraudulent transfer has been conducted, please contact your financial institution. Again, they have their own mechanisms. And then obviously law enforcement, time is really on the essence on our side.
I had an instance several years ago where we had a customer that was sending vendor payments, and then they don't get a call for 2 months from their vendor. Hey, you guys owe us $600,000, and there was an unwitting mule on the other end, a lady that had met the man of her dreams online and was wiring all that money out of the country. And so that was kind of one of those situations where it was really hard on both sides, because you had an unknowing mule that was pushing that money out of the country, and we were not able to recover any of that.
Wow. Thank you for sharing. So this has been informative. I know we've tried to move quickly but efficiently. I want to thank all of our panelists for being here. Great job. Really appreciate it. But also would like to thank all of you who are on the webinar for being here. Following the call, everyone's going to get an email that's going to have a recording of today's session. You will also have an opportunity to provide feedback with a short survey. Please take the time, if you don't mind, to complete that. We would love to get suggestions and ways we can improve this. This is the first in a 3-part series around fraud in general. In the month of August, we're going to be talking about business payment fraud. And in September, we're going to be talking about internal controls and things to be thinking about to have better controls to mitigate fraud. So be on the lookout. We would love for you to join us so that you can register to attend. In the meantime, again, thanks for being here. For our customers, thank you for your business. For those who are partners of ours, thanks for being partners. And if you heard anything today that you'd like more information, please reach out. We would love to be consultative, love to learn, and love to help you any way we can. So again, thanks for joining us. Hope you have a great rest of the day, and we look forward to talking to you soon.